And we are going to get started. I met Barb not too long ago, and we just got to chat and talk. And you know what we really had in common was this deal with boundaries. And
hmm
so, Barb, I would love for you to, because it's interesting when I was reading your notes. At 52 is when you had this big shift, and that was about the same age it was for me
Oh, no kidding.
when I had a big shift. So I would like to have you introduce yourself
hmm
and kind of let us know where you're at right now at the moment, and then we're going to
hmm
talk a little bit about that 12-step recovery that you
Yeah.
mentioned. All right.
Yeah.
So
All
tell everybody
right.
about you and how you got where
Yeah.
you're at today.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Barb Nangle. I am a speaker, a boundaries coach, and a podcaster, and a woman in 12-step recovery. And what Cindy's talking about is when I was 52, I hit a codependent bottom. And honestly, I had never heard the word codependent before. And that
Mm.
is me being a lifelong seeker, having been in therapy for 37 years, not continuously, but close, read a gajillion self-help books, done all the things. And if you're not familiar, codependence is essentially when we're focused on that which is outside ourselves. So, what are other people doing or not doing? What people think about us rather than what we think about ourselves. The classic codependent is in a relationship of some kind with an addict or an alcoholic, whether that's their romantic partner or their adult children or a sibling or parents or something like that. And I landed in 12-step recovery for codependence and very quickly got into another program that was called Codependence Anonymous into adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families, which is a trauma recovery program where you reparent yourself and you use the 12 steps to recover. I didn't even know I qualified. I don't identify as a child of an alcoholic. I didn't know I had childhood trauma. I didn't understand about intergenerational family dysfunction. And I really learned how to build boundaries through this sort of haphazard, meandering path through the 12 steps of recovery. It was sort of a byproduct of recovery. It wasn't the focal point. But for me, because I think of my core wound as codependence, learning how to build healthy boundaries changed everything. And so after I got a handle on the boundaries, Cindy, I started reading about them and it helped me retroactively understand what had been happening for me. And while I was reading, I was taking notes and I'm visual. So I would draw like images to visually depict, what I was trying to understand about boundaries. Well, those drawings turned into handouts, which turned into a workbook, which is the backbone of my boundaries coaching program. So now I coach women like former me. So I help overwhelmed people pleasers say no without guilt and shame so they can finally put themselves first and stop stressing over what other people think. So I think of it like this. It's professional women who say yes when they really want to say no and who neglect themselves because they're so focused on others. And that was me. And I am a single person. I've never been married and I've never had children. I'm in a relationship, actually, the only healthy one I've ever had. Thank you, boundaries. And I was still an overgiver and a people pleaser and still overly focused on other people. And so, like, for people who are, women who are also married and have children and extended family and stuff, like, that's just, it magnifies. And so, I really want to help people who are like I used to be because the freedom that I have received, the amount of energy I have in my life, the fact that I have so much more peace in my life than I ever had before is a gift that I want to give other people. On top of that, I'm actually a sociologist by training. I was working at Yale University when I hit this codependent bottom. And number one, I saw the ripple effect of my boundaries on my team. And I was like, wait a minute, none of them are in recovery. What's going on here? And it just goes to show that when one person changes the dynamics of their interactions, it changes things around them. And then number two, because of my sociological background, my mission has been since grad school, level the playing field. And it's not like that's gone away since I started my business. It's just pushed to the side because I'm really interested in healing people. But I've realized in the last 6 months or so that those actually are meshed. So I think of it like this. Women are never going to make inroads into the social structures of society when they keep saying yes to things they do not want to do and when they keep neglecting themselves. So if you want to get promoted and you want to have power and you want to get the raises, this is never going to happen if you're constantly doing other people's work and if you're neglecting yourself and running ragged and completely focused on everybody else. So I could say so much more, but I think I'll stop there because I'm sure I've given you plenty of meat to pick on.
Yes, yes, you absolutely have kind of hit a few notes too with what you said in relation to my experiences and what I see happening as well. And codependency, first learned about it actually in my 30s. And then I realized for myself that was the beginning of my shift or pivot, but I did not move very quickly. It was slow. I was resistant because just a lot of things about the way I was raised and the things that I was telling myself at that time. And finally, in my 50s is when I really had to step back and make a major shift. And I feel like I have heard, and obviously you have too, since those are the people you work with, so many women in our community are natural givers. And that often means saying yes when we're worn out or we're not sure, or we kind of feel obligated. So I want you to share with us what are some subtle signs that someone might be struggling with codependent tendencies, even if they don't identify with that label. Someone like me
Yeah,
who didn't even know about that, someone like
yeah,
you who didn't know
yeah.
that label.
Yeah, I would say the number one sign is you're resentful. So you're
Mm,
resentful of other people from taking advantage of you. You're resentful that you do all the work and don't get all the credit. You're resentful that you're doing things for other people all the time and they're not doing things for you. You're resentful that people keep asking you for help. I mean, this was me. So I think of myself as having been a volunteeraholic before recovery. I volunteered for 15 different nonprofit organizations, not at the same time, obviously. But so that meant I had a reputation as someone who helps. And so people kept coming to me and asking for help. And I think things like, I can't believe she just asked me for the 10th time to help out. Well, she asked me 10 times because I said yes 9 times.
mm,
Right. So it's
hmm.
not like I feel like I'm resentful at them, but it's really I'm the one who kept saying yes. Or, I would be resentful, like, I keep giving you all this advice and you're not listening to it. Well, they didn't ask me for the advice. And also, if you keep giving someone advice and they're not taking it, stop giving them advice.
Yeah.
Like take that energy and put it into your own life. So I think resentment is like one of the most powerful ways. Like if you're feeling overwhelmed, there's lots of reasons that people can feel overwhelmed. But if you're someone who is a helper and a giver, and you're feeling like you can't get it all done and that you're neglecting yourself and your own things that you want, like if you're not having fun and pursuing your hobbies and you feel like there's no time left for you, that's another sign. And I just want to say something like now that I have healthy boundaries, my community service I deliver in my 12-step recovery programs. In terms of hours per week, Cindy, I actually give more hours per week now than I ever did before. But I do it strategically rather than at the drop of a hat. I
There
do
you
it by
go.
choice, not some compulsion or feeling of obligation. And I do it after filling my cup first so that I'm
Hmm.
not trying to pour from an empty cup. I pour from the overflow. And the only way I can have an overflow is if I give to myself first. So I do more things that bring me energy and less things that drain me. I actually don't really do much at all now that drains me, whereas so many other things. And that's another
Mm,
clue. Like if you're doing things that are not filling your cup, but that are draining you, and you have more of those things, that's a sign. And then, I would say the number one thing that stops people from setting boundaries or even upholding them is they get like flooded with guilt and shame.
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
another sign. Like if you even think of setting boundaries and that makes you feel shameful or guilty, then you're probably codependent. It's probably deeper than you're just simply overgiving. Like there's a reason for that going on. So, that's quite a number of signs. Hopefully that'll help some
Oh,
people recognize
yes.
themselves. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it sounds like you and I both work with professional women, and many of them are really successful on paper,
Mm.
but
That
they're
was
running on
me.
empty. Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
That was me
Mhm.
too. So, what shifts when a woman starts putting boundaries in place without that guilt that you're talking about?
So, what happens is they actually uphold their boundaries. And I think of it like this. I'm living my life on purpose now. I didn't know that I wasn't living my life on purpose before, but I don't do things I really don't want to do. I don't spend time doing things that I don't really enjoy anymore. I did stuff I didn't like to do all the time to not make waves and to fit in and to not rock the boat and to keep the peace. And here's the thing, you get to have peace too. Like keeping the peace includes you. So if you're doing things to keep the peace and you're not feeling peaceful, you're not keeping the peace.
Yeah,
So, we get to live in a much more purposeful, intentional way. We have a lot more fulfillment. We have a lot more joy. And honestly, I feel a sense of control over my life that feels really healthy. It's not like a trying to exert control, but I feel like I'm in charge of my life. I'm not being bandied about by the universe or by the people around me and what they want and need. And so it feels a lot more, I guess the word that's coming to mind is equanimity. I have a lot more equanimity. And it doesn't mean like I don't have bad days and bad things don't happen to me. Of course I do. But I know like I'm situated in me. I'm situated in my body, in my life, rather than being out there in all these different people's lives. And that has a lot to do with why I have so much more energy now than I did in the past, because I'm not expending my energy on people, places, and things that I can't control. And I'm focusing internally and like using my inner compass, which was all covered up with dust and muck and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
And now, like, I can actually read my inner compass and be like, you know what, that works for me, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah. And a lot of the things that you're mentioning and that you bring up really do touch on the things that I've been through, and I'm sure many of the people that are listening to this recording. And in the beginning, saying no feels really scary, especially in your work, because they tell you you're not a team player. They kind of get at least this is my experience. They kind
Mhm.
of look at you and feel like, what's going on here? You're not being a team player anymore just because you're setting some boundaries on your time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And in family roles, where you've
Mhm.
always said yes to this and this and this and this, maybe because you're the oldest child and they rely
Mhm.
on you for all that stuff. Um, what would you say is the particular first step that you recommend for setting boundaries without blowing up a relationship or, an opportunity that you may have, being
Mhm.
able to, just give some grounded advice so
Mhm.
that this feels doable for people that
Mhm.
might be right there on the
Yeah.
cusp, wanting to
Yeah.
start doing the
Yeah.
boundary thing?
Yeah. So, regardless of context that you just painted, what I usually tell people is the best place to start setting boundaries is with yourself. So, in the workplace, it might be, oh my God, there's an email from so and so. If you don't have the bandwidth at that moment, or if you're supposed to be focusing on something else, you set a boundary with yourself. And I'm like, I am not opening that email until I am done with this task. right? So you are doing that for yourself. You're not allowing them to invade your time and your space and your energy. And then my next step for people is to start with people who are like emotionally mature, reasonable people that are most
Mm,
likely to be okay. So you get practiced at setting boundaries. It's like with anything. You don't pick up a 15-pound weight and start doing, curls with it. You start with 1 pound, so start with the light boundaries. So starting with yourself, and nobody needs to know that you waited to open that email until you were done with your other task. That's something that you don't really have to share with anybody else.
hmm
But what's
hmm
going to happen in either case is feelings are going to come up, often of guilt and shame. And what we've been doing our entire lives is trying to avoid the guilt and shame. So, number one, it's not going to kill you. I know it can feel like it's going to kill you, but you can feel the feelings and they will pass. This is what feelings do. And I can actually, like, I work on helping people to, like, not have the guilt and shame at all. That is not a quick fix. That's a more longer term fix. But what that's about is getting clear about your values and what's important to you and acting in alignment with that. Because when you're in alignment with your values and you're really clear, this is who I am, this is what's okay and not okay with me, this is where I end and begin, it's really a lot easier to stand firm in your boundaries. And if people push back on them, it's easier when you're standing firm to hold to those boundaries and to not get swayed by that and not be flooded with guilt and shame because you know that you're doing the right thing. So let's just take the email example. If I'm working on a project that I'm really close to ending and it's really important to me, but if I took time to open up that email, it could send me down a rabbit hole. Do I feel
hmm
guilty for finishing the thing that I'm working on? Probably not, especially if I'm really close to finishing it. And then I
hmm
can give my full attention without resentment to the email that I'm opening up. I honestly, when I worked full time at Yale, I had Outlook email and I got a ding every time an email came in and I stopped whatever I was doing. I'm a recovering multitasker and I was a program coordinator for urban education, prevention, and policy research, sometimes running programs in up to 25 schools at a time. So I got a reputation from those people out there. Barb is really responsive. That's great. I had a really hard time getting my stuff done because
Yeah.
I was constantly interrupted with other people's stuff. And so I don't have a dinger on my email anymore. I check my email at a time that is convenient for me. That's like if you think back to the days when we got mail, like would you go out and check your email, your mailbox like 15 times a day? I mean, granted, mail came one time a day, but it's like people can send you a letter anytime they want to send you a letter. People can send you an email anytime they want, but you're the one that's receiving it. And if you work in a place where that's not the expectation, then if that doesn't work for you, like remember, you've chosen to work there. You've chosen that job.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not a victim of that. And you can either change things or choose to stay there and participate. And this is the culture of this organization, or you can leave, or you can continue to suffer. But when you start
Yeah.
to realize, like, I've chosen this, you have agency and you get to stop complaining about things.
And you know what, Barb? That word right there, you have agency.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to stop thinking that I had no option.
Yeah, me too. Same. That was my biggest
Mm,
paradigm shift, Cindy. Coming out of
yeah.
victim mentality is what that's called.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
guess
not the
so.
quintessential victim, and my guess is you're not either. But if you're
Right.
thinking if only, if you're complaining all the time, if you're blaming, those are hallmarks of victim mentality, like thinking you have no choices.
Yeah.
And you actually do. I mean, a lot of times our choices are like, I'm between a rock and a hard place. I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. Like we have those
Mm-hmm.
sayings for a
Mm-hmm.
reason, but
Yeah.
they're still choices.
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought up the importance of starting within. Starting with
Mm,
yourself, starting with those small choices to not open
hmm
that email or
hmm
not open your text the minute you hear the ding, just turning off the dings. I mean,
Oh,
I have my
that's mine
notification.
is never on. Yeah, mine's
I have
never on.
mine turned off too. And sometimes people say, well, did you see your chat text or did you read this? I'm like,
Mhm.
no, not yet. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I didn't read it yet. But
Yeah.
because they do expect, just because they send it, that you're going to automatically be on the receiving end, because that's what our society has come to,
Mhm,
actually.
mhm,
And so you talked about starting within and doing those things within yourself. How can doing your own inner work lead to broader social impact? You mentioned that
mhm,
it
mhm, mhm,
impacts your team when
mhm,
you realize, that what you do does impact your team. So how do you see that personal boundary work that you talk about
mhm,
contributing to more just and
mhm,
empowered world
mhm.
environment around
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, so I'll start with, when you say yes to things you don't really want to do, especially in the workplace, you're probably like over giving and taking on too much responsibility and not able to put as much time into your own work. So that's going to delay you in terms of what are you contributing like on your own work to things that are promotable, because that's what I hear women say. I'm doing all these activities that do not make me promotable. Right. So like, of course, like in some workplaces, being on committees is going to make you promotable, but
Hmm.
be selective about which committees you actually really want to participate in, and then you get off of a committee before you join another one, that sort of thing. And then when you're constantly focused on other people and what they're doing or not doing, you are expending your energy towards stuff that you can't control. And in fact, it's an endless drain, because not only is it going in the outward direction, it's going towards things you can't change, which means you don't have any energy to put in here. And if you're so used to focusing out there, you're not focusing in here where you can actually make a difference. So there's that. And then I will say, like, what I call what you're referring to as personal boundaries, I primarily call them boundaries of self-containment. These are things I need to either contain or stop doing. And for me personally, Cindy, these were the hands down most impactful boundaries that I learned to set. It was almost like I was lobbing bombs into my own life, but I didn't know it. So I was creating chaos, I was creating drama, and I was exacerbating the already existing chaos and drama going on around me. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. So I worked for the same boss for 19 years at Yale. I loved her dearly, but she drove me crazy. She was one of the most unreliable people I've ever met in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So I gossiped about her, which I was shocked to learn that complaining about her for 19 years behind her back was gossip. That's kind of the definition of gossip, and I'm not dumb, but that's how I just didn't know it. And I created a culture of expectation in my workplace. We don't deal with problems, we talk about them. We wait around for the boss to change, which is never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't use our agency in areas where we could, because we're waiting for other people to change and we're so fixated on how things should be. So when I stopped gossiping, oh my God, it cleaned up so much of the drama and chaos in my life. And then another boundary of self-containment, I did not know. I always thought of myself as a super positive, optimistic, glass half full person, and I am. I didn't know that I ruminated. I didn't know that I catastrophized. I complained and I blamed all the time. So when I rethought thoughts, whether it was catastrophizing about the future or replaying scenarios from the past, I was activating my nervous system. That is not a place from which you can think clearly. I was spending time doing that instead of actively working. And so when I stopped doing that stuff, which I couldn't do until I realized I was doing it, it changed everything. I have a much more regulated nervous system. It's a lot easier to think clearly because I can access my frontal lobe of my brain, because I'm not in, I call it lizard brain. So stop rereading messages and replaying things and wishing things
Mm-hmm.
were not the way they are. So those are just some examples. And you can see like the ripple effect. Like if I'm stopping creating drama in here, I'm not spreading drama around me and I'm not making the already existing drama worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really can, uh understand where you're coming from because I feel that, and I am pretty certain that the majority of us human beings go through phases like that. And so I appreciate you bringing that up, being honest and open about it, and
Mhm.
helping people to realize that boundaries is the foundation of everything, it seems like, you
Absolutely.
know?
Like you can't follow through on any personal development program if you don't have healthy boundaries or if you don't
Yeah.
work on boundaries. Like you're going to just cave on it. Like for me, a gigantic, I mean, there's so many differences. Like I show up for myself in a way that I always showed up for other people, but I show up for myself now. So here's an example. I have a podcast that I've been doing for over 6 years. I have 313 episodes. I would not have been able to do that in the past because that's something I would have had to show up for me. If it's for someone else, like I'm there. But
Yeah.
like I wasn't able to be consistent and now I am. I can count on myself. I trust myself. I love myself.
Mm.
I think I liked myself before, but I didn't love myself. And I
Yeah.
absolutely did not trust myself. And now I do. And it has everything to do with the boundary building process.
Yeah. Well, I really feel like the people that are listening to us right now, we've had several people come and go on here, and those that are going to be able to listen to this through YouTube and all,
Mhm, mhm,
if what you're saying has really hit a note with them,
mhm,
I would love for you to share with us how they can get in touch with you
mhm,
and maybe take that first step to
mhm,
kind of clearing the air,
mhm.
getting rid of that murky, like you said,
Mhm.
dust, get
Mhm.
all that dust out there. So how can they get in contact with you and start dusting off
Mm.
their, I guess, their identity?
Yeah. So if they want just real light touch, then follow me on Instagram at Higher Power Coaching, that's my favorite social media outlet. But if they
Hmm.
think they want to go deeper, I've just been inspired that I would be happy to offer a 20% discount for anybody who listens to this that decides they want to sign up for my private boundaries coaching. So they can go to barbchat.net and sign up for a 30-minute Better Boundaries call with me. And
Hmm.
if they take me up on the offer by April 30th, they'll get 20% off of whether they do the payment plan or pay in full plan. If they want to do the private boundaries coaching, which I can't tell you how many women have had major, major transformations from doing this
Hmm.
work. It's really for specifically the women that I mentioned. If you're saying yes and you really want to say no, and you're focusing on others and neglecting yourself, this is for you.
Yeah, there you go. And what we'll do too for people that are watching, we're going to put
Hmm.
the links down in the show notes
Hmm.
so that you can connect with Barb,
Hmm.
this boundaries coach. And I know that just listening to everything that we've talked about,
Hmm.
if you're finding that it is something that you want to explore further, um, do it.
Hmm.
Step out. What is one piece of advice you'll give them before we sign off?
Yeah, it's really to keep the focus on yourself. And I teach a number of ways to do that, but I think that I know will resonate with you, Cindy, is one of the ways to keep the focus on yourself is to take really good care of yourself. It is not
Mm-hmm.
selfish to
Mm-hmm.
engage in self-care. It's actually self-preservation, and you get to be included in the circle of people that you give care to. And if you're a mom, you're like modeling for your children, that you get to receive from people. And when you grow up, you're going to get to receive. You're not expendable. So don't teach other people that you're expendable.
There
So
you
keep the
go.
focus on yourself.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mention as a mom because I can see some of that driven, um, you know, put it out there tendencies in my kids sometimes. And
Hmm.
I mean they're adults now, but yeah, I can
Hmm.
see that. So hopefully, like you said, we are going to change that. We're going to
Hmm.
shift that. And
Yeah.
it starts by one step at a time. So thank
Hmm.
you again, Barb, for
Yeah.
sharing your experiences and your resources with our community. So
Yeah.
we're going to say goodbye to
All
everyone. If you
right.
have
Well,
any
thank you.
questions, yep, there you go. All right, we'll talk to you guys later. And thanks again, Barb.
Bye. Thanks,
But
Cindy.
yep, bye-bye.